imagine what it would look like if you were constantly worrying when or how your next punishment would come. If you were living with a person who could just snap at any moment and do something to you that's either painful or scary or both. Today I want to introduce you to a dog who lived exactly such a life, and why corrections are not the way to go, even if your dog is going crazy on leash. And you will meet Nuriya, a little husky girl, and how her life was like. So stay tuned and have fun with this episode of A Dog's Soul. Alright, so Nuriya was a husky girl. She was 4 years old and she had a history of lunging, barking, growling at other dogs on leash. And she was not a huge girl, but she was heavy enough so her escalations were draining for her parents, right? And they wanted to stop her. They wanted to just go on normal walks. They were really outdoorsy. That's why they got a husky in the first place. They got her from a breeder, so they wouldn't have any issues later in life. And they went to socialization class with her when she was a puppy. Unfortunately, in that class, the dogs never learned how to just walk by other dogs and not engage with them. And this is what happens very often in puppy classes. That's why I'm so eager to tell this story in many groups, because it happens a lot. And it's the reason why so many young dogs get frustrated when they see other dogs and start lunging, barking, growling. Because they want to get to that other dog, because that was what they had learned as a puppy, right? And Nuriya was no different, with one exception. She could not stand another female dog. She was intact, and especially during her heat period, she was really bothered by other female dogs. So this was something that had nothing to do with puppyhood. That was just her and her hormones and having difficulty because of that. But she did not only lunge at female dogs. She lunged and barked at pretty much every other dog. And that's why her parents contacted a dog trainer in their area. And that dog trainer told them that they should come to Packworks. Now, I want to emphasize now that a pack walk is something completely different than a social walk. They might sound the same, right? We walk with a group of dogs and they get used to each other in a safe environment and all those great things. The difference is that a pack walk usually roots in a belief that a dog is a pack animal, which is not true. And this whole pack theory thing often comes with abusive methods. And a social walk usually is based on a little bit more education. It's based on a little bit more science. So the groups are smaller, the methods are nicer, and if you're not 100% sure, just ask the trainer. Sometimes it's just a wording issue and there is nothing bad behind either one. And sometimes there is something bad behind one and the other. So just ask how the dogs are treated, how the training methods work, and all those things. Usually we trainers are very happy to answer those questions up front. So you're really comfortable in the group and you pick the right one for you and your dog. Now, Nuriya's parents didn't know that there were so many different training methods, and they didn't know that there were trainers out there who would actually hurt a dog. That's hard to believe, right? I mean, shouldn't we trainers be just loving with our pet parents and pets and dogs and dog clients and all those things? But things happen. So Yeah. And Nuriya's parents believed that trainer, and I mean, it sounded good, right? Nuriya was supposed to be around other dogs and just get used to them and stop the escalations on leash and stop the barking and the lunging and all those things. Now, they did not talk about why Nuriya was actually doing that. The trainer said that wasn't relevant, but it is. And what happened was they went to that Packwork. They met 15 other dogs, which is way too big of a group for one trainer. It's just nothing you can manage with really giving everybody the attention they need. So in my country, there is a thing like an animal welfare trainer, and those animal welfare trainers have a maximum of 6 dogs per group, and that is mandatory for them to keep their certifications. So this is not just my opinion. This is just what makes a group at least as individual as possible for every pet parent to get the attention they need and their dogs need. But alright, they didn't know that, and the first thing the trainer did when Nuriya saw another dog and started tensing up is she took the leash out of their owner's hands, put it up on the top of Nuriya's neck, and yanked at it really hard. So Nuriya, as soon as that leash and her collar was up behind her ears, she started choking. Because when the leash is tense and the collar is behind the ears, the dog is choking. That's just what happens. And then she got yanked at it. And if you have ever experienced a car accident where you got whiplash, that's about the feeling the dog gets when the dog gets yanked on a leash while wearing a collar. So Nuriya was startled by that sudden tension on her neck, by that sudden movement her body made without her contributing to it, right? Because whiplash only hurts after, it doesn't hurt during. So it's still an uncomfortable feeling. It's still weird to just be moved by somebody. So she stopped, and that's how this works. Nuriya was startled, and startling is a sense of fear. And she also gave her parents this look of, hey, what's happening? And they saw her insecurity in her eyes. But they didn't make much of it because the trainer said she had to be snapped out of it, and this was the way to do it, and now she was fine. And she was for a few minutes, and then things got too close for her again. Because whenever our dogs lunge and bark and growl, they are telling the other dog to move away because they are uncomfortable. Now what happened was, the other dogs, of course, didn't go away because they were in the same Packwork, and they were advised to never listen to what another dog was saying. So the trainer again grabbed Nuriya's leash and yanked on it pretty hard, and this went back and forth a couple of times until it was harder and harder and harder to snap Nuriya out of it, because she was getting more stressed and more anxious, and she didn't understand what was happening, right? Because she was just saying, hey, I'm feeling uncomfortable, get me out of the situation, and for that, she was being punished. And her parents did not help her at all. So she was confused at that, right? And what happened was Nuriya could not contain herself any longer. She could not stop her escalations because she was just not having any more of it. It's like if you have a really bad day and one thing happens after another and you get more stressed and more stressed and more stressed, and then you snap and you yell at some kind of other car driver who just cut you off, right? You would normally not do that. But since your day has been crappy, you snap. And it's the same thing for our dogs. When they get more stressed and more stressed and more stressed, it stacks up. and then they cannot stop escalating. They cannot stop lunging. They cannot stop barking, no matter how hard you yank on that leash. So, what this trainer advised her parents to do was to tell her to sit, to stand still for the moment, and then to sit. And of course, Nuriya could not do that. It's like if you were talking yourself in a rage and somebody says, shut up. Can you? Can you just shut up, calm down, and sit down? No, because you have all these emotions going on, right? And Nuriya had all these emotions going on. She wanted to get out of the situation. She was completely overwhelmed with it. She was completely done with the other dogs. She was just not seeing any way out of this. And now they're telling her to sit down and make herself still when everything inside of her screamed for her to get out of that. Now, of course, it is common practice for those trainers, and for this one it was as well, to not have any disobedience in her groups or from any dog. So she was expecting every dog to obey all the time, like little robots. And I don't know but how you feel about it, but I'm kind of seeing my dogs not as robots, but as living, breathing creatures who have their feelings, and sometimes I might not like those feelings, but they have them, so we have to deal with them. Nuriya was not allowed to have those feelings, so the trainer grabbed her in her fur and wrestled her down to the ground. And then she pinned her down with her hands. Nuriya was shaking at that moment. Nuriya was displaying every aspect of fear a dog can display. She had huge eyes. She had a stressed face. She was shaking. She pulled her tail between her legs. All of that. And that trainer pulled out her tail because she was not allowed to feel fearful, right? Because you can just turn that off. It's easy, right? And she said she had to stay that way until she calmed down. And what she actually meant was she had to give up. This is how you break a dog. This is how you break a dog's spirit, and you see the life leave the dog's eyes. The dog is not dying or anything, but the soul is a little bit. So after a while, Nuriya gave up, because what other choice did she have, right? And that was when she no longer escalated towards the other dogs, because that experience was so horrible for her. It was so extreme. And I mean, put yourself in her shoes, right? This is absolutely, I don't have to tell you that this is an absolute no-go. It's just not okay. But of course it works, because the dog is not stupid. The dog will try to avoid those experiences as best as they can. So they shut down. They shut down, and this is again what happens in abusive encounters in humans as well. Some people describe out-of-body experiences. Some people describe amnesia, so a type of memory loss. Some people just describe not having any feelings anymore. They are just gone for the moment. And that's a protection mechanism of the brain. And it's the same thing that's happening to our dogs when they experience such horrible treatments. Now, she was not physically harmed, and that is another thing. Often, those trainers say that they are not hurting the dogs because they are not physically harmed. But dogs have a soul, right? They don't have to be physically harmed. They can be psychologically harmed. And this is what's happening here. So, Nuriya stopped, but that wasn't good enough. I don't even know why the trainer kept going, and Nuriya's parents didn't know either. But every once in a while, when the trainer came back to Nuriya, and at that point, she was just walking next to her dad. She was not looking left, she was not looking right, she was just walking and breathing. That was the only thing she was doing. She was not pulling, she was not going a step in the front, she was shut down. Still, whenever the trainer got to them, she told him to make her sit, and he wasn't even allowed to say sit. He was to immediately grab her fur at her hips and pull her down into a sit. And Nuriya was so startled by that she actually snapped. She tried to bite her owner, which she had never done before. She was never a dog who would try to bite or anything, and she didn't close her jaws, so she didn't hurt actually. But that was again not allowed. So she was quote-unquote muzzled. Now this was not a muzzle. This was one of those nylon slings that go over the snout and close the mouth. Now, this is another level of horror, because dogs need to breathe and pant with an open mouth, especially when they are stressed. And this was in summertime. It was September and pretty warm. So I don't know the exact temperature, but it was a very warm September. Almost as warm as in August. So can you imagine a husky who could not pant? Fortunately for her, this was the last few minutes of the walk. So she was relieved and back in the car within just a few minutes. But this was actually a life-threatening situation for her. And a dog who experiences such a thing, such a treatment, such a training method, sometimes needs years to get back to normal, sometimes never gets back to normal. Because this is a very traumatic experience. And if we try to work with these dogs, it doesn't have to be training methods, right? It can be just any traumatic experience. But for Nuriya, she was afraid for her life. She feared for her life during that walk multiple times. And such a trauma, to cure that, to heal that, it takes a really long time. And sometimes we see the aftermath even years after. And sometimes we never get everything out. And sometimes everything's well for years, and then when the dog gets old, a little bit of it comes back. So if you have a dog who experienced such traumas, be patient and know that sometimes those dogs need management for the rest of their lives. For Nuriya's case, what could happen for her, the most likely, is that she might be sensitive for any kind of touch, especially when a hand moves toward her hips, because that was where her fur was grabbed. But fear generalizes pretty easily, so it can actually generalize to everything in that situation. It can generalize to every other dog, can generalize to her parents, to other people, to kids running by, to cars driving by. That's why working with punishments is so dangerous. You never know what the dog will connect. You don't know that with rewards either, right? But with punishments, the impact is dangerous. With a reward, we might reward the wrong thing. Okay. And we cannot reward a bad feeling, right? So we cannot make the dog more aggressive or more anxious or more fearful with a reward. That's not possible. That's not how emotions work. And if we connect anything else by mistake, so a kid running by or another dog or a person or whatever, that's awesome, right? But if we connect that thing or that person with punishment, the dog might start avoiding or even actively trying to remove that thing or person. And that's when we get more problems. And it's never necessary to work over punishment. It's never necessary. We can work force-free with every problem, with every behavior issue we have. Of course, if it's medical, then there will be boundaries to what we can do. But the same goes for punishment-based training. So if you see your dog struggling with the situation and showing big emotions, try everything else first. And there will always be trainers who can help you with that. And you don't even need a trainer who is close to you. Like I do, I work virtually. So don't believe anybody telling you that you need to correct your dog. You don't. What you actually need is find a way for your dog to feel comfortable with the situation. And we cannot do that with corrections. It's just not possible, right? So what I want you to do today, if you're struggling with leash reactivity, go to the description and get your free guide. Get out of that situation today. And if you know anybody who is struggling with leash reactivity, send him or her the link to this episode. Together we can help even more dogs, even more people to get out of this constant struggle with each other and just have fun together. Because that way, we can build trust in our relationships and we can overcome those problems easily and without damaging either the soul or the body of our dogs. Give your dog a huge treat from me today, and we'll see each other next time with a lighter episode. Until then, have fun training. Bye.